You found the Backup Wrap-Up, your go-to podcast for all things backup, recovery, and cyber recovery. In this episode, we're talking about something that keeps me up at night: ransomware attacks on backups. A recent study showed that 96% of ransomware attacks now target your backup infrastructure. 96%. Why do they do this? Well, it's simple, I think. If they can take out your ability to recover, they've got you over a barrel. You're way more likely to pay that ransom if your backups are toast. Sadly, that same study showed that only about 25% of organizations actually felt confident that they could defend against those attacks. That's a serious gap. Prasanna and I break down the numbers, talk about what immutability is and why it's your friend, and discuss what you could do right now to stop handing over the keys to your backup kingdom. By the way, if you don't know who I am, I'm W. Curtis Preston, aka Mr. Backup, and I've been passionate about backup and recovery for over 30 years, ever since I had to tell my boss that there were no backups of the production database that we had just lost. I don't want that to happen to me. I don't want that to happen to you, and that's why I do this. On this podcast, we turn unappreciated backup admins into cyber recovery heroes. This is the Backup Wrap-Up. Hi, and welcome to the Backup Wrap-Up. I'm your host, W. Curtis Preston, aka Mr. Backup. And I have with me a guy who was so proud of me in my recent car maintenance attempt. Yeah. Prasanna, Andy, how's it going, Prasanna?
I am good. But to be
Wait, you're not
fair,
going to tell me you weren't proud of me.
no. To be fair, your current vehicle requires almost zero maintenance.
Yeah, except for what
Sorry,
I did.
you could do.
Yeah. Well, there is. I told you I discovered there is actually people highly recommend changing the I don't know, gear oil or whatever for the
Motor.
For the motor.
Mm-hmm.
But like at 100,000 miles, which I have passed.
Yes.
So,
well, do you also do your air filters?
No, I haven't done that. I know I'm supposed to do that, but
yeah, at like 20,000 miles. And how many miles? You blew past that just a skosh.
Yeah, just a skosh. Like 6 times past that. I have been doing the tires though.
But you haven't been doing it though. That's what I was saying. Versus like before, your previous car, you used to do everything on that vehicle.
Yeah, I had to do a lot, right? Brake jobs, and I haven't needed a brake job on this because of the way the brakes work on the Tesla. But I got to crank my car up, which for those that don't know, Teslas, they got to be just a little different with everything. And there's these pressure points that, you don't just have a little pinch weld where you put the jack on. You have a pressure point that you have to use that. And so it's more difficult than normal to.
Yeah. And the reason you do that though is because of the battery pack, right? The battery pack is
I get it.
Part of the body, and so it's down there because low center of gravity, and you want it at
it just would have been nice for them to give us 2 pressure points on the same area. So
most cars don't do that.
Huh?
Most cars don't do that.
Well, most cars, you would lift it up and then you would put the jack stand underneath like the wheel infrastructure, but this doesn't have that.
But you survived and you fixed
I survived. Car survived.
The parts under your
I have
car.
the new pan on there.
Yeah.
Very exciting.
Speaking of surviving.
Yeah. Speaking of surviving.
What are we talking about today?
Yeah. So this episode, we're going to just talk a little bit about, we what are you laughing at?
As I said, surviving. Do you know what song popped into my head?
I got nothing.
Destiny's Child, I'm a Survivor.
I'm a survivor. Yeah, I like it. And we want you to be a survivor too, right? We want your environment to survive a ransomware attack, right? That is the whole point of the book that I just finished writing, which is coming out. It's going to be like right after the first of the year. By the way, I have to reminisce. This is very reminiscent of my very first book that was going to come out in the Christmas of '99, right?
Hmm.
And we did all this work because there was a trade show called LISA, Large Installation System Administration. And the company that I worked for at the time was a sponsor at LISA. And so we really wanted to have the book to come out in time for that show so that we could like give it away at the show and all, that kind of stuff, right? And we succeeded, right? The show was like in the first half of December,
Mm-hmm.
and it was in San Diego, by the way, interestingly enough. And because the company that I worked for was a sponsor, I was able to go back into the sponsorship area when nobody else was there. And true story, the first copy of my book that I ever saw and obtained was stolen from the O'Reilly booth.
Boo.
I literally went in there. I saw my own book, and I was so excited. I just had to take one. And I'm pretty sure the statute of limitations on petty theft has
Wait,
ran
is
out
this
at
the
this
same
point.
book that you also nearly lost the
Yes,
copy because at Disney?
yeah, it is the same book that I nearly lost. Yeah, absolutely at Disney. Yeah. Anyway, so just reminiscent of that, but we talk a lot about the fact that you need to prepare your infrastructure, specifically your backup infrastructure, for a ransomware attack. And so I thought that I went out and I looked for a couple of articles or studies to see if I could, back that up.
But before we get to sort of the studies, right? I think
Yeah.
first it's probably useful to talk about like why should a person care about their backup infrastructure? Because isn't ransomware all about cyber criminals attacking production instances, encrypting data, stealing data from production, right? All that sort of stuff.
So yes, it is. Everything that you said is correct, except for the word all. So if you take out when you said it's all about attacking primary infrastructure, it's not. It is very much about also attacking your backup infrastructure. So why would they do that? I think the answer is obvious, but perhaps it's not. If they can take out your backup infrastructure, if they can encrypt that, if they can delete that, if they can expire your backups, right? Then they take the backup infrastructure out of the equation from a ransomware perspective, and thus increasing the chance that you would then pay the ransom is
Yeah.
the number one reason. Do you remember the second reason? I know we've talked about it a few
Yeah,
times.
I think if I recall from prior podcasts, it was the fact that what is backup? It is taking all of your production environment and protecting it somewhere else, right? Into the backup infrastructure. What does that mean? All of your data is in one place. So
Right.
you don't need to go compromise 100 different production applications. If you can compromise the backup infrastructure, you have access to all the data stored in those 100 production applications.
Yeah, and I should have pulled up. I know that I don't have a stat, but I know that a significant percentage of of modern ransomware attacks include exfiltration, right? Because if they're able to exfiltrate your data, it then once again increases the chance that you will pay the ransom because you're thinking they have not only have they prevented my access from important data, they have my 11 herbs and spices and they're going to release it to the public if I don't pay the ransom. Or either they've got, IP that they're going to release, or they've got damning evidence. Do you remember the Sony hack?
Yep, where they were talking about artists and other things like that, which did not go over well.
Yeah, and that one was very damaging to Sony at the
Yeah.
time, right? To their relationship with their talent and all of that. And that was a successful, meaning like they didn't pay the ransom, and so they ended up actually releasing the data.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just two things to add. So I know in past episodes, when we talk about sort of encrypting data plus exfiltrating and then threatening you again, we've referred to that as double extortion. We didn't make up that term. That's kind of what people have
Yep.
been referring to.
Yep.
The other thing, you also mentioned IP in terms of like companies' data being stolen. In that case, you're not talking about IP addresses, you're talking about intellectual property.
Thank you very much for clarifying. Yeah, we're talking about intellectual property, right? So your 11 herbs and spices is the one I like to use a
KFC
lot.
for those who are not US based.
Yeah, dude, KFC's everywhere. I
That
have
is true.
been in many countries and I see KFC everywhere. We have exported that horrible. Like, I love it. I love the restaurant, right? I love KFC. It's been like a year since I've had it, but I think Raising Cane's I think has taken
Mm.
over my need for fried chicken. But yeah, we've exported that quite a
Yeah.
bit. But yeah, so the 11 herbs and spices was the phrase that was always up in the advertisements, and so they've got your company intellectual property, whatever it is that makes your company, and they're threatening to release it, or they've got damning information on, um, you know, either your executives or perhaps just the behavior of your company. And in our modern world, the threat there is the threat of being canceled. Right.
Yeah.
Right now, like
Did
I
you hear
can
about
think
the
of
latest?
what's that?
Did you hear about the
What?
latest thing? I
Which?
think you're the one who told me the Campbell soup.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's just crazy, right? This crazy thing
Yeah.
that a Campbell soup allegedly a Campbell Soup executive. He was supposedly the head of cybersecurity or something, and emails from him leaked out that he was
Yeah.
saying very unflattering things, both about his own product or their own product, and also being highly racist about his interestingly enough, Indian coworkers. Basically, anything that is negative about your company or the executives of your company in the current shoot first, ask questions later world that we live in, you don't want that kind of stuff to get out because you don't know the degree to which that is going to be, negatively impact your company, right?
Hmm.
So, go back to the question at hand. The worry is that either, or the desire on the part of the threat actor is to either take out the backup infrastructure so that you have to pay the ransom, or use the backup infrastructure to exfiltrate data.
Okay,
Um,
there's also a third one.
what's the third one?
If a company is using SaaS and decides not to back up their data, they don't have to worry. Hopefully, you're not that company, but
Hopefully, you're not that company. Yeah, um, yeah. I was just thinking about. Yeah, I mean, if you have if you have a SaaS infrastructure, and you don't have a third party backup of that, and then the threat actor attacks that infrastructure, then like for example, the Rackspace incident where they were a SaaS provider of hosted exchange, and then the entire thing got attacked by ransomware, and they basically had to give up and move on. They basically moved the entire infrastructure over to
yeah,
Microsoft 365,
yeah.
right?
And
Because yeah,
and I would say if we go back in history, right, not even that far back, ransomware actors ignored backups.
right.
Right? They didn't care about the backup infrastructure, but because of all these things, people getting smarter, people not paying the ransomware because they could recover their environment, backup actors are like, "Hey, let me go after that."
Yeah, and so and this is just because maybe everybody doesn't believe what we're saying, right? And so I thought
Why
it would be
not? You're
interesting.
listening to this podcast. Come on.
Yeah, well, like some of the people listen to this podcast think I'm an idiot, right? So, my wife being one of them. Anyway, no, she just uses it to go to sleep. The there's a couple of different reports here that I thought were really telling. The biggest of which was this ransomware trends report from 2024, which was cited in Venio IT's 25 disaster recovery statistics, and they were saying that 96% of modern ransomware attacks attempt to infect the backup repositories.
Yeah.
96% is basically everything.
Yeah. It's like, what are those other 4% doing?
Yeah, it's like the 1 out of what is it? The 4 out of 5 recommend sugarless gum for their patients chew gum. What's with the one guy? Like he doesn't like you don't think they should chew sugarless gum? Anyway,
So do you remember Dwayne when he
of
came on the
course.
podcast and he was like, because he was a red teamer
Yeah.
and
What
he
is a
was
red
going,
teamer, Prasanna?
it is someone that a company hires to attack their infrastructure and pretend like they're a hacker so then they can figure out what the flaws are and what the vulnerabilities are that they should probably fix.
As depicted in the amazing movie Sneakers.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so he actually mentioned, he's like, I love going after backup infrastructure because
Yeah.
that has everything. I
Yeah.
clearly remember him saying that, and that's like stuck with me all this time.
Yeah, and some of it is not as obvious as you might think. So we talked about that the backup system is this honeypot from which you can get basically everything. He also looked at it from a different standpoint. He also looked at service accounts, for example, service accounts that are often unmonitored, that often don't have none of the limits for typical accounts are applied to these service accounts because, well, it's the backup service account. And so, of course, it's going to be transferring ridiculous tons of.
Yeah.
So, if they can get access to that service account, they can then gain direct access to that host and transfer the data just like the backup system.
Which is interesting when you think about it, because on the podcast, we talk about uh, least privilege access.
Yeah.
And if you think about backup, it's the exact opposite.
Yeah, it is. It is. It really, yeah, because backup, in order to do its job, it has to basically be all powerful. It has to have access to every file, every database, everything on the system, which is why, by the way, right, iPhone backup is so challenging
Yeah.
because because of the way that the security is done within the iPhone, right?
Yep.
So you can't, for example, back up third-party apps in the iPhone from a third-party app because one third-party app can't see another third-party app's data. And so
Yep.
if that problem existed in regular IT infrastructure, this would be a problem. And so
Yep.
you do have these service accounts that are essentially all powerful that are typically unmonitored. And if they are monitored, they're all of the alerts and everything are turned off, right? What are you laughing about now?
No, I was going back to that story. Sorry, maybe we don't have time for another story, but the story you would always tell about how you worked at a company where they went the opposite way and locked everything down, and you could never do your job because
Yes,
backup needed
yes.
access to everything, and they would not allow you access.
That story is at the exact same time as my book story.
Oh,
Because it was literally in 1999. We were preparing for Y2K, and that company, the cybersecurity people, took their job seriously. And it's it's the it's the organization that had the crunchiest internal infrastructure that I've ever seen before or since. That even once you were inside, it was not assumed that you could get from anywhere to
yeah.
anywhere. And here I was, this jerk that was good trying to transfer data from everywhere, and I was setting off all kinds of bells and whistles, and they kept telling them to shut it off. So here's an interesting thing. Here's another reason why we're having this conversation now is you got the first statistic, 96% of ransomware attacks include targeting the backup system. Couple that with the following data. So this is from a Kaseya study. Well, let me ask you a question. What do you think? So, we've been preaching ransomware, and we're not the only ones, right?
Yeah.
This is like the biggest thing ever, right? For years, right? So, what percentage do you think of the environments that they have? What percentage of these environments do you think have any policies or controls to prevent malicious access to the backup infrastructure? What do you think that percentage is?
So, being an optimist, I would right. I would hope for like 80%, but I know that is probably way too high.
Yeah, that would be a correct assumption. The percentage that was in this study was 25%.
Oof.
So
Ugh.
we have some work to do, right? And so that's why we're starting here. It's like just number one, um, you know, what do you call it? You need to um, you need to do something about this, right?
Mhm.
96% of the attacks and 25% of people are ready for those attacks.
Yep.
This is a problem, right? And which is why here's a third statistic. This said this is from another from the Invenio IT study. Less than 7% of companies recover within a day from ransomware, right? Over a third take more than a month. That makes perfect sense to me, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
as we covered a lot in the book, the hardest part of the ransomware recovery is not the restore part, it's the what the hell happened part,
Yeah.
right? And if you have something happen to your backup infrastructure, then it's just everything's out
Yeah.
the window.
And that and it's interesting given everything we've talked about. I know we've had Mike on the podcast, Mike Saylor, who's your co-author for this book. Um, talk about how difficult it is to do the forensics and or time consuming, right? It's not like
Yeah.
you're going to just say, "Oh, everything's good. I'm just going to blow away everything and recover my data and start going again." So is it just unrealistic to even have a one-day stat? Why does that even make sense?
No, I think that's a perfectly reasonable question. I actually I was thinking about that as I was reading it, right? Because I don't think it is.
Yeah.
Unless you have like the smallest of attacks, or you really spend a lot of money for XDR tools and SIM and SOAR tools, and you catch it at that moment. You catch it at the initial infection, and it sets off all the triggers, and then you quarantine it at that one computer that got
Yeah.
attacked. Then sure, right? If you're able to figure that out, but you still, you know what? Even in that situation, you have to still go around and look everywhere. You can
Yep.
figure out, you can quarantine that server or that laptop and say, all right, we know what they put on that laptop. Let's go look everywhere else to see if that thing is everywhere else.
Yeah. Or to
And
figure out what else they might have dropped elsewhere in your environment, which may not have the
absolutely
same signature.
right. And and so you can't assume that you caught it and therefore, oh well, we caught it early and so we're good. You don't know what you didn't catch, right? And
Yep.
so it's just not easy,
Yeah.
right? And so going back to the topic at hand, the one thing I just want to make sure that we do is at least let's make the backup infrastructure impervious. And
Mm.
how can we do that? And the real answer, the only answer, in my opinion, is actual immutability, right?
Yep.
And because you cannot, as long as the computer, if it's a computer and it's plugged into the network, it's hackable, right? You can reduce the risk, right? We can do two things. One is like guaranteed. The other is like, let's not make it, let's not leave the keys in the ignition of the car sitting in, in the worst neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
Um, And so, because we know it's a target, and so we do things like separate the backup infrastructure, right? To use a
Hmm.
different IAM system that's identity access management. Use a different IAM system. So don't have it just be part of the intra ID domain.
Hmm.
Don't have it be part of whatever centralized password system that you have. Don't make it be part of that. Make it very different. Perhaps even a different kind of infrastructure, not just a different domain in intra, but perhaps don't even use that over there, right? It's
Yeah.
only like 4 systems. So do you really need Active Directory over there, right? So consider perhaps a local password management system with a third party password management system. Separate that backup infrastructure as much as possible. Obviously, turn on MFA or turn on passkeys. That's something
Hmm.
that we talk a lot about. But if your backups, if the actual data of the backups is sitting on truly immutable storage, where that even you can't delete it if you wanted to, then at least you know you will have that data when you need it.
Yes, I agree with everything you said.
I
I
sense a big
do.
but.
No, but yes. I want to talk about in a separate podcast episode because it is going to be more detailed.
Yeah.
I want to talk about immutability
Mm-hmm.
and why it's difficult in backups.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it's as simple, because otherwise everyone would turn the switch. And so I think we should cover it in an episode where we talk about immutability,
The different
especially when it
kinds.
comes to other technologies.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it is simple as long as you choose the right product. Choosing the right product is the difficult part, right?
Yeah.
Because there are many products that call themselves immutable that don't meet the definition that I just said, right? And
We'll
I can
cover
think
that
of
on a future episode.
Yeah, we'll cover that on a future episode. So,
Yeah.
All right. So your backup systems are under attack. 96%. How many times I got to say that? 96. You round that up, that's 100%.
Let's just say 100, nearly 100. I think that's what people
nearly
should.
100%. Couple that with the other stats that we've seen in other studies of like the number of companies that will be attacked by ransomware.
Yeah.
Right. So you basically, if you don't have a method and a process to block the threat actors from your backup system, then basically you're just going to hand over the keys.
Yep.
Yeah.
I agree. And
Yeah.
it's one of those things too. I know everyone's like, oh, ransomware is never going to attack me, which is probably what people were saying 3 years ago. But just look at the news and how many people get hit every day, every other day. It just keeps going up and up and up and up and up and up.
It's why we took the approach we took in the book, right? It's not a matter of if, but when.
Yep.
And statistically speaking, this is the most likely kind of thing that's going to happen to your environment from a cyber perspective, right? Yep. So that's why we took the tack that we took in the book, which is you're going to get ransomware, so let's make sure that you're going to be able to respond to it.
Yep. Makes
All
sense.
right. Well, thanks for chatting, Prasanna.
No, I'm looking forward to our next episode on immutability.
Me too. And hopefully you folks are listening to it or looking forward to it. Hopefully you folks are looking forward to it too. For some reason that was tying my tongue, but that is a wrap. The Backup Wrap-Up is written, recorded, and produced by me, W. Curtis Preston. If you need backup or DR consulting, content generation, or expert witness work, check out backupcentral.com. You can also find links from my O'Reilly books on the same website. Remember, this is an independent podcast, and any opinions that you hear are those of the speaker and not necessarily an employer. Thanks for listening.